It's right here, bro. Yeah. For attack, the change in government.
So we got a deadweight loss. If you totaled everything up right, that's correct. So overall, has society's welfare gone up or down? Down because of the intervention with the subsidy. There was a lot of shuffling going on, but at the end of the day, when all the dust settled, we lost, overall, we lost area E in total. Now, one thing to keep in mind is what did we have before we started? A, B, C, free market, F, G, J. So this is where it gets a little weird. There's society's welfare, but we lost area E, right? So it's kind of a little weird. We got this being lost, but we didn't have it before. But remember, this is all dollar values, right? So that makes sense when we start remembering that it's not a geometry problem like that little toy that you got when you were young on putting the little puzzle pieces in. We're really talking about dollar values at the end of the day. So we lost area E. All right. We also did a price ceiling. So with a price ceiling, compared to the free market again, we're going to have a price ceiling of $3. So remember, the government steps into the market and says, by law, prices can't go above this level. Our ceiling price is at $3. What is the change in consumer surplus? The change in consumer surplus. Remember, we're going back to the free market. We started off with ABC. Government steps in. What is the change in consumer surplus? Got an F and a G and an H and an I. This is where I swear, you guys, I'm not telling you this just to start with the definition again. Difference between what we're willing to pay, what we actually pay. $3. Willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual. Do I keep going? No. Why? I ran out of supply, that's right. So one of the effects with the price ceiling, remember, is we had a shortage. Consumers would like to have 1,400 units, but there's only 600 on the shelf. So the amount that they actually get to enjoy and consume is 600 units, which means we've got this kind of weird trapezoidal looking thing, which leaves us with ABF. After, so what is the change in consumer surplus? Minus C, we lost C, correct? And minus G? No, we didn't have that. So plus F, I did gain F. So for the consumers, it's plus F, but minus C. Plus F minus C. How about them producers? What are they left with after the price ceiling? What area? What's the new producer surplus? J, which means they lost F and G, right? So they used to have F, G, J. Now they're just stuck with J. Difference between what they actually get is the ceiling price, minimum, actual minimum, actual minimum, actual minimum, up to the amount that they actually sell, which is only 600. So they lost F, and they also lost G. Now, what about the old government revenue here with the price ceiling? Changes, nothing, right? No change, there's no money collected or spent or anything. So that gets a big fat zip. And total things up, plus F, minus C, minus G, dead weight loss again. Now, here's the transfer that was the good intentions of the policy, perhaps, or what they were trying to accomplish. The consumers got F at the expense of the producers. So in the grand scheme of things, of the government trying to say, oh, let's tax the producers and give it to the consumers, but we're going to do it through this mechanism called the price ceiling. That's what they accomplished, is that the consumers, some of them, not all of them, but some of them got F at the expense of the producers. But what often gets overlooked is this part. Overall, we lost still. Society lost from putting that into place. All right, question, yeah?
So was the subsidy total change, was it a deadweight loss too? Or?
The subsidy was a deadweight loss too. So yeah, right now, anytime there's a negative down here, we've got ourselves a deadweight loss. Yes. Okay, price floor. We did the price floor as well. Let's see, I think I got an orange here, although the orange and the red might kind of look like each other. Again, we're going back to free market. We're just saying, suppose that the old government imposes a law of a price floor. Price floor. What is the change in consumer surplus? Minus B and C, right? So we're starting to get, sounds like we're starting to get into our groove here. We used to have ABC. Now that the government has the prices at $5, the people are left with the difference between what they are willing to pay, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, but it stops here because that's all they're willing to buy is 600, and that led to a surplus, right? So here we are at that amount, which means we lost B and C. Minus B minus C. How about the producers? They used to have F, G, J. Now they're getting $5. The government program of trying to get them a higher price certainly worked because they just made it the law. What's their impact? Minus G plus B, good. So difference between what they actually get and the minimum, actual minimum, actual minimum, actual minimum, all the way up to the 600 units. Their new producer surplus is B, F, and J, which means they gained B, but they lost G. Government revenue? Zippo, right? It's just a price floor, price control. B plus B minus B cancel out, deadweight loss. Minus C minus G. All right, so now we get into the hybrids over here. This is kind of interesting. By the way, totally based on a real-world story. Back in the 60s and early 70s, the government did this. They wanted to protect the family farm, and so they imposed a price floor for corn at the level of $5. These numbers aren't reflective necessarily of the prices at that time, but that was the concept. Let's protect the farmer. The $4 price of the free market's too low, and so let's do the price floor. They do the price floor, and then they find out, oh crap, there's a surplus of corn. All these farmers, what are they doing? They're producing 1,400 units, but only 600 are being purchased, leaving us 800 units, 800,000 bushels of corn or whatever, right, is the surplus. So the government goes, oh, my bad, I didn't think about that. I will make things right for you farmers. I'll buy them from you. So I'm going to buy the excess corn because I was trying to help you in the first place. It was my bad that I screwed up that you wouldn't sell all these, so I'll buy them. So all of a sudden the government steps in and becomes the buyer of the surplus. And that's what we're going to analyze in this column. This is the price floor with government expenditure is what the GE is. So the government, if you want to put a little note to yourself, the government's buying up all of the surplus. Okay, so what is the change in consumer surplus? Relative to the free market again, we're going back to the free market. They still just are left with A, right? So nothing's changed for the consumer. So they're like, oh, whatever, that program sounds fine. So they are minus B minus C compared to what they were before. They still have the same amount of loss as the regular one. How about the producers? What is the change in producer surplus now? Plus B plus C plus D, that's right. So the difference between what they are actually going to get and the minimum, actual minimum, actual minimum. Now we're not stopping here because the government's going to start picking up the rest of them. Actual minimum, actual minimum, actual minimum. So the new producer surplus is this big triangle, giving us plus B, plus C, plus D. Now, did the government make the farmers better off compared to this one? Yeah, right? So we're moving in the right direction. Hey, great policy. All right. Now, is this still zero? No. What are they spending on the program? I'll run with you here. I heard a G, C, D, E, H, I. And L and M. What are they paying for the corn? Full price. How many units? 800. They got this whole, the amount that represents their government spending is they're spending now $5 on all 800 units. So now make sure you write small because you got your work cut out for you here. Minus C, minus D, minus E, minus G, minus H, minus I, minus L, minus M. And now add up all those. Let's see, we got the plus B, minus C, plus C, plus D, minus D, whoops, minus C, minus E, minus G, minus H, minus I, minus L, minus M. Woo! Good policy, huh? Good idea? So we kind of spiraled down a little deeper into our hole. This is true story, you guys. True story. So now here it gets even kind of better as we start to think, you know, the politicians finally they were all happy with themselves passing this policy in Congress. And then a year later, they got a knock on the door and they said, excuse me, Congressman, what are we supposed to do with this corn? What do you think they did with it? Yeah, why couldn't they sell it?
Because it was old.
What would happen if they sold it? It would affect the market price, right? And they couldn't sell it for less than their own law unless they broke the law. And they can't dump it off to Ethiopia or something because it's a world marketplace. That would screw it up. So it literally at first stayed in bins and slowly rotted away. And then they're like, well, now it's kind of worthless. Let's burn it. And you're right, they burned it. So you talk about government waste. This was one of the biggest examples of waste that's gone on, that all this corn was burned up. All right, so here steps in the economist and comes up with maybe a different way. Remember how I told you we might still want to help people, but maybe there's alternative ways to do it better. And that's what we use this analysis for. This target price program is the approach that we're going to try with this one. And let me outline what the target price is. Number one, we set, government sets the target price. Let's call it PT. So instead of setting a floor price, we're going to call it a target price. But we're doing kind of the same thing. We're going to say, hey, $5 is the amount I want to help the farmers buy. Let's set PT now equal to hit one thing here. We're going to set PT equal to $5. And then, So PT equals $5. Next step. Producers supply all that they want. If they know they're going to get $5, how many are they going to produce? 1,400, yeah. They're not going to produce more because that's all that makes sense. Due to the law of increasing costs, they're going to stop at 1,400. So in this case, we're going to have the quantity supplied equal to 1,400 units. Step number 3. Let consumers buy all quantity supplied at the highest price they're willing to pay. Which is now going to be called the market price. With our notation, let's call it PM, the market price. Using the information up here, what are consumers willing to pay if producers need to unload 1,400 units? $3, right? So in this case, with these numbers, PM ends up being the $3. And then the last step here is critical to fulfilling the overall mission. At this point, how much have the sellers got per unit? $3. So the government's going to make up the difference with what they call a deficiency payment. They're going to pay the deficiency between the target price and the market price. So what are they going to have to pay? $2. So the government's going to make a deficiency payment. So government pays producer. Government pays producer deficiency payment.
For full quantity?
Yes, for all that they sold. A deficiency payment equal to PT minus PM. The difference between the target price and the market price. They're just going to make up the deficiency. They're going to make up the difference. And in this case, using these numbers, that's $5 minus $3 gives us the $2 deficiency payment. Now the producers are made whole, if you will, given the target price. We were intending to help them out. All right. Any questions on the scheme, I guess, the new policy scheme? Let's go to the numbers. This is what economists do. Why are we doing this? Well, if we analyze this now, what is the change in consumer surplus? Good. F, G, H, and I, right? So the consumer surplus, now the consumers are buying all 1,400 at a price of 3. Difference between what they're willing to pay, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual, willing, actual. They are going to pick up F, G, H, and I. And what about producers? B, C, and D, good, right? So they used to have FGJ. Now they're selling all 1,400. They're selling them all to consumers, but the government's making up the difference, giving an additional plus B plus C plus D. And the change in government revenue. B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I, right? The whole enchilada here is $2 for all 1,400 units, it's going to be the area of that rectangle. Those are all going to be minuses, like you guys were saying. So minus B, minus C, minus D, minus E, minus F, minus G, minus H, minus I. And now the fun part here. How did society wind up? We got plus B, plus C, plus D, plus D, plus F, plus G, plus H, plus I, minus E. So still a deadweight loss, but are we able to conclusively argue that this program is better than this program? Why? And this deadweight loss of E is right here. So we've proven that this program is less wasteful than this program. This is clearly better for society than this program. All right, so that's kind of how we can use this type of thing to analyze different policies with consumer and producer surplus. I see a hand up?
I was asking if I could take a picture or get all of that place.
Yeah, just see me after class. I'll have this sheet. So.
If government intervention is a negative on the market, why haven't we learned to take a step back?
To stay out of the market, yeah. So, okay, so good question. Here's the thing. If we believe there's a need for the government, which 99.9% of the economists do, there's a couple wackos out there that are kind of anarchists and say, you know, maybe there's a way that the free market can handle everything. I'm not one of them. We need to have government tax revenues somehow. And so what we're learning here is that there's different ways that it distorts the market depending on the program, right? So there's going to be a negative of some place. And so we can look to economic analysis to pick the least hurtful one to raise those taxes. And for those of you who had macro class with me, where turned out to be the argument for the least impactful harm? We didn't talk about deadweight loss back then. Was it with the sales tax or the income tax? Which one is more efficient from an economist's perspective? The sales tax. So the argument we made in macro class was to eliminate income tax, abolish the IRS, although they'd still function as a monitoring thing, and collect all of our money at the cash register with sales tax. So just different ways to collect money. You're going to see this come up in this presidential campaign again. It's been coming up each time, but if you start listening to some of the candidates, and by the way, that's a bipartisan thing, tends to be a little more conservative, so you probably hear it on the Republican side, a little more on the Democrat side. But at the end of the day, if you really look at it, it's just kind of this type of analysis where, like, we should do it this way. It might be harder to convince some people on the left because they might not want to just learn it because it seems too weird. And they're usually thinking more about, well, we got to increase the taxes on the rich and whatever. All right, other questions or comments? Yeah?
Why does Doug approach pretty much the same subsidy?
Okay, I was so excited that you said that. In fact, that's even worth an extra credit point. See, I want to give incentive to other people to pipe up like that. So yeah, all right. So Sam's looking at this, and look at this column. How much different is this column from this column? None. There's no difference at all. So I'm going to challenge you for another extra credit point. Maybe I'll give Sam first dibs, but you're going to have to answer this in 10 seconds. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What is the difference between the two? There is a fundamental difference, even though this outcome is the same. 10. Okay, let me open up the floor. Who's got it here? Let me go. I saw this hand.
Wouldn't the subsidy be giving money back to the consumer rather than just giving it back?
Well, it ends up being shared that way anyway. So that's why if you look at the consumer thing, it's actually a similar effect going on. Let me go back over here. Give me your name again. KC Hat. Didn't you have your hand up?
You did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have wrong KC Hat. All right.
The subsidy is $2, and the target price is $5. It's going to be cheaper for that.
Nope, it ends up being the same $2. So that's correct, but there's kind of some deeper stuff going on here.
The subsidy the government balanced beforehand.
Okay, that's a okay. So that you're just nibbling on the start of things here. So that is one difference. The subsidy's given out beforehand, and then afterhand. Now, technically, they could front them some of that, maybe, or there could be a scheme there. But you're starting to touch on that, yeah.
Target price doesn't move the demand curve.
Neither one moved the demand curve. That's what it is, though, artificial. The real one was still there. So that was just, when we talk about the fake demand curve, what makes it fake is that it's not their money. So that's just a marker to figure out the new price. Okay, anybody else? Here's the difference. Through the magic of the golf club, tell me what happens when there is a change in demand. If this increases here, what happens to the subsidy spending? It goes up. Remember the tax wedge? Well, now it's going to get over here, right? We're going to float it in. I can't do it with the earth thing up there, but in other words, that $2 per unit is going to continue to be spent. Flip over to the target price program. What happens to the amount of the deficiency payment? It goes down, right? So this is much more dynamic and responsive to a changing economy. And in fact, if the demand goes up to here, how much is the deficiency payment? Zero. It disappears. The government program disappears. Did it need a passive Congress to disappear? No. It was a market-driven change. It was on autopilot without needing Congress to come back into session and pass some law, which we know they're a little slow at doing. And in fact, this is going to respond to the market right away. If next year it looks like this, it's going to change. And if demand gets up here, it just disappears altogether because the market's now higher than what it was before. Yes?
What if there's an opposite shift in demand, though? Demand goes down.
So if there's an opposite shift in demand,
Then the target price would increase.
right, is that bad? That's correct. So if the demand went down, the deficiency payment's going to grow. Is that bad? Bad in the sense of government spending, but what was the purpose of the policy in the first place? To help producers. If our intent is to help producers and to kind of be a shock absorber, then yes, we're spending more money, which some people might say is bad, but if the original intent is to help the producers, we're continuing to help the producers, right? So in that sense, it's not bad. Oh.
In that place with government set up price at like 3.
No, that would probably just continue to, that would complicate things more. That if they're really trying to change it, they would change the target price down if they thought, but it's going to hurt the farmers if they do that, right? If they alter the target price. But that's a variable that they could change to change the deficiency payment. All right, so great question, Sam. Let me, I want to write that down. So, how is, let's just put difference between subsidy and the target price. Question mark. The answer is important in that it's dynamic. The deficiency payment will change with the market demand and supply, for that matter. I'm just going to put the market, because even if the supply curve moved, it would also work with it. So deficiency payment will change with the market, whereas the subsidy stays fixed. Subsidy is fixed by law, meaning that it's going to need a change of law to change it. And then, by the way, this might make a great test question. Somebody just asked me about the midterm exam. The midterm is short answer problems here in class, and man, I just love thinking about this sheet here. That's why I spent a lot of time on this. So note, so these notes are going to be really critical for you to look back on and study from. Note, if there's an increase in demand up to PT, then deficiency payment is 0. It disappears. That's kind of cool.
What's that last part?
Good part.
What is that after deficiency?
Try to get LoveGov teed up here, sorry. All right. What was your question? Did you get it? Deficiency payment? Payment. PMT, payment. Deficiency payment. Anybody else? Everybody get that down? Questions? All right. Let's do a little LoveGov here. Part 2 of our 5-part series. This one is 4 minutes long. Let's see what old Gov and them are up to. Oops.
You're really doing it, Liv. I got a studio space. I am so proud of you. And Gov is super excited to help.
I thought he was against you running a business.
No, now that I'm done with college, he thinks it's a great idea. Plus, he said it might help me get back into job.
Who you talking to? I had to confiscate this from some eco-terrorist. He's trying to introduce foreign foods to the local fauna. He didn't have a wildlife impact for him.
This is really important.
Society is built on rules and regulations. When people ignore those rules, society just collapses. And we're all just tearing each other apart like it's the Thunderdome. Although, the Thunderdome development zone will be a huge boost to the local economy. I got an idea. I got to make a phone call. She will not play that.
Hey, Space Cadet, pass me that rack.
You still have these?
Sure. Babies love them.
Stupid babies who can't keep food in their stupid mouths.
I think you're being unfair to babies.
I'm not angry at babies. I'm angry at the reminder of failure. Isn't this great? I can't make these fast enough. Everyone loves my kids.
How exciting! I love small business. Not as much as big business, but still. And I got you something.
You do? What is it?
Ta-da! What every business needs.
Oh, thanks. You're welcome. Hey, I can't do lunch tomorrow. I'm just totally swamped with orders. And Libby and I are going to take a stab at optimizing my Etsy page.
Did you say Libby?
I've been researching SEO stuff and making some design tweaks on her site. It's going super well.
Wait, she's not working for you, is she?
Yeah, she's really good at the dorky stuff since boring.
Analytics suggests that the pink bibs are doing better than the blue bibs by 35%.
Look, last thing I want to do is tell somebody else what to do. Go away. I'm just a little concerned. Are you ready for this? Hiring another employee is a really big step.
She's already been freelancing for me.
Wait, you've been paying her?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh boy, okay. Well, it's a good thing I'm here, huh? Now that I know Livia is working for you, well, it's my moral responsibility to protect her.
Thanks, I guess, for caring, but I don't have to worry about Alexis.
Into this?
Wait, what are you protecting her from?
I'm protecting her from you, her employer.
It's just a small business. It's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. Is child labor not a big deal? What if poisonous, toxic chemicals in these bibs make Libby more incoherent than she already is? Is that not a big deal? Alexis, businesses are dangerous. I mean, I'm talking marijuana level dangerous. And all these rules have been put into place to protect workers and consumers. So, if you want to hire Libby, you're going to need to comply.
I don't know if I can afford this. Maybe I can't hire you.
Kind of sounds like you just protected me out of a job. Now, they say that there's all these regulations to help workers and consumers, but all that leads to is fewer jobs.
Okay, that is exactly why we have unemployment insurance. There's nothing to worry about. All these protections are written with good intentions, and I've never heard of a road paved with good intentions that leads anywhere bad. Are these lead-free?
They're 100% cotton.
I'm not 100% sure of that. I need to get it tested. It's a little scented bill. Don't pee in that one. See you for lunch tomorrow.
And if I follow all the rules and everything, do you think my business can still make a profit?
I don't know. Not really my area of expertise.
All right. Let's see where that relationship ends up here. So we got to get into our Chapter 8 stuff here. We've got, oops, and Part 3 was automatically playing here. As fun as that would be, that will have to wait for next week. All right. So, we're going to look at your happiness and quantify it. So, get this, economists have come up with some ways to measure happiness. No kidding. We're going to have a little happiness calculator that we can see how happy you're doing, and hopefully, ultimately, maybe you can think about some things that'll make you happier even at the end. So, happiness in econ class, I gotta get this pen fixed. Where's my black? It's called utility. So total utility.
This is Chapter 8.
This is Chapter 8, yep. Remember, we're skipping Chapter 7. So total utility is the total satisfaction you get from consumption. Is total utility. Now, economists live at the margin, right? So we've been talking about a lot of marginal things, and now we also are going to look at marginal utility. Marginal utility is the additional satisfaction you get from an additional unit of consumption. All right, so let's see, how many Oreo cookie people do we have out there? All right, so if we sit you down with a box of Oreos, we can start to think about the happiness that you get from the first Oreo. So the first Oreo, you bite into that sucker, and maybe you'll lick the frosting, eat the frosting first, and then crunch it down. That hits you pretty well. What number would you assign to the satisfaction you get? I'm going to walk around the room and point at you. I want you to think of a number. I don't even care what number it is. I'd like it to be a positive number, just to keep things straight. So I do care that it's a positive number, something less than infinity, greater than 0. That's all I ask, right? So a number that represents the satisfaction that you get from the first Oreo. Boom. 10. Sleeping? 3. Verbalize. 2. 464. 8. All right. Now, I want you to think about your second Oreo. Your second Oreo, after you've eaten the first, no milk. Oh. Sorry, no milk. So, you had a 10. What do you got for the second Oreo? A 6. Okay? So you start to get the picture here that our happiness at the margin, especially without milk. Actually, I had a student do one of their research projects on Oreos with milk as part of what I do. This is pretty good too. The video project that we have for you guys at the end, they did this with Oreos, her daughter, and it was hilarious. So maybe we'll have time to show that later. But first Oreo versus the second Oreo. Lord help us if we go without milk and go to the third Oreo, right? Versus when we start comparing the first to the second to the third, just like we did with beer and pizza and everything else, we have an important law kicking in. The law of diminishing marginal utility, right? Diminishing marginal utility. The law of diminishing marginal utility says that as you do this, the amount of satisfaction that you get eventually declines. So as you consume more and more of a good, the utility you get from each additional unit eventually falls or diminishes. All right. Now, sorry, give me your name again with the 10. Nolan. And Kyle, you had 464. This is on the first Oreo. Is Kyle happier than Nolan with the first Oreo?
No.
Is that because 464 here, 10 here, Kyle's definitely way happier with the first Oreo? No, we can't do that. Now, what did make sense, though, is when we stayed within the human being here, and Nolan said he went from 10 to 6, the number change there reflected something real for Nolan, right? Just to keep the numbers easy because I don't feel like doing too much math. Let's say he said a 5. He likes the second Oreo half as much as the first Oreo, and that has real meaning, right? So it's possible for us as human beings to assign numbers to our preferences that reflect our happiness. It's possible for us to use numbers to reflect even nebulous stuff like happiness. However, it's incorrect then to make interpersonal comparisons between Nolan and Kyle. That doesn't make sense. We got to kind of draw the line there. But it is possible to assign numbers to satisfaction. And that's kind of what we start to work with. That is what we work with in this chapter of assigning numbers to utility. All right. So graphically, if we were to draw quantity of Oreos here, I guess, on the horizontal axis, this time on the vertical axis, we're not doing price like we've done so much so far this semester, but we're going to do utility. As we look at this concept graphically, would the utility function tend to look like A, B, or C? C, because of this, right? Each time I eat a cookie, I'm getting happier until you get to that point where you're throwing up and you're actually forced to force feed the Oreo or something like that. So then your satisfaction might be starting to fall. But if you can at least throw away the cookie or not eat it or something, you're not going to be made any worse off by continuing to get more Oreos, right? As long as you can refuse to shove them down your throat. So happiness is an increasing function. Getting back to our math stuff, is this a positive relationship or negative relationship between quantity of Oreos and utility? Positive. So it's an upward sloping function. But now we've got a little extra detail on it. It's increasing at a decreasing rate. Increasing at a decreasing rate. Not A, where we'd be increasing at an increasing rate. If we looked at that, then it's like I'd give a 10 for my first Oreo, my second Oreo is a 14, my third Oreo is a 20, and we keep going up and up and up. So A and B don't reflect this concept for our preferences. So we have C reflects diminishing marginal utility. That's our correct answer graphically. Let me draw a new one then with our total utility function looking like this. Let me go with Nolan's 10. The first, oops, not a 10 there, sorry, I flipped my axes here. That was your first Oreo. Nolan's first Oreo was a 10, right? So I go up to the function, hang a left, and Nolan got 10 units of satisfaction on the first Oreo. On the second Oreo, Nolan got how much at the margin? 6. So what is this number? 16. Good. You guys are getting it, right? So my total utility increased to 16, but the incremental amount of happiness that the second one brought me graphically was actually just this region here. The first Oreo gave me 10 units of satisfaction. The third Oreo, we didn't press Nolan on, but we'll just give him a number. Let's say brought you up to 19, meaning that the third Oreo gave you only 3 units of satisfaction. And so this then, these little rectangles here, is a way to make the total utility and marginal utility graphically. That's how it works. If instead on the lower graph, we measured marginal utility. By the way, it's just utility, but we're going to graph out the marginal utility function. The first one looks very similar, gave us 10 units of satisfaction. The second unit gave me the 6. So if I graph that out, I go up to 6, and then finally at 3, my marginal utility function looks something very similar to what we've been doing. The marginal utility function looks like that. And what does that sucker look like? The demand curve. So there's a connection here between demand. Now, what are we measuring on the vertical axis when we have a demand curve? Price. So we're reflecting our happiness in a good by the price we're willing to pay for it. So if we were, again, to solicit to Nolan, hey, how much are you willing to pay for one Oreo? Oh, I'll pay 50 cents. Well, I'll let you have another one. What are you willing to pay for that? I don't know, a quarter or something, right? We can kind of solicit pricing information from him in a similar fashion to the way we're doing utility. But here we're measuring happiness, there we're measuring dollars, but there's a connection. There's a direct connection that's important to get. All right, questions so far? All right, I think we're going to get our schedule goggles on here a little. I can't stay away from pizza and beer, so neither will you in econ class. All right, and maybe some of you are similar. So we're going to do a little example here. There's the graphing. We're going to throw some schedule goggles on and see how this stuff works. All right, so example, beer and pizza ultimately, but we're going to start with beer first. So we got quantity of beer, and we're going to go 0. There's going to be, by the way, about 6 columns total, so make sure you leave enough room. Start on your left-hand side, and we're going to build kind of a big table. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Total utility from beer. 0 beers, 0 happiness. 1 beer, 40. 2 beers, I get up to 60. 3 beers, 70. 4, 75. 5, 73. And 6, 63. So marginal utility of beer. First beer, 40. Right? So it's kind of undefined, by the way, on this 0 one. We're going from 0 to 40. The first beer gives me 40. Second beer, 20, right? 40 to 60. So if you guys want to do this, you're kind of going from 40 to 60, 60 to 70, 0 to 40. That's how we're incrementally on the schedule goggles. That's how we're calculating the marginal utility. All right, so we get 20, 10, 5, -2. We're starting to hug the toilet apparently or something. And then -10. All right. So there's our schedule for beer. Now, the consumer's problem is how the textbook will look at this. The consumer problem is to maximize total utility subject to a budget constraint. Now, a few of you are in my personal finance class, or you've been in my personal finance class before. We talk about doing a budget. We're not quite reading this way, but this is the consumer's problem. This is the problem that economists assumes you guys do day in and day out. We don't assume, by the way, that you pull out your calculator and you put little numbers on your happiness, although you could, because we just showed that it's possible to do that. So your goal in life as a consumer is to maximize total utility, maximize your happiness. The Constitution says we're here to protect your rights in the pursuit of happiness, right? So we're kind of thinking, okay, so we got a bunch of people running around trying to maximize their happiness. How do they do that? Where does that happen here with beer consumption? At 4, right? So one way to do that is to just keep consuming until you get to that highest level. Okay, so that's our first little step. It gets a little more interesting when we have more choices to make here. So let's throw in the quantity of pizza. I'm going to switch to the blue here. And just to keep the numbers easy, we're going to do 0 slices, 1, 2, all the way down to 6 again. 3, 4, 5, 6. Total utility from pizza, 0 pizza, 0 utility. 1, 20. 2 pizzas, 34. 3 pizzas, we climb to 44. 4 pizzas, 50. 5 pizzas, 54. And 6, 57.
Yes, but really hungry.
Marginal utility. You guys do that on your own. I'll come around. Good. All right, so let me squeeze through here. Grab that. All right, so we got 20, 14, 10, 6, 4, and 3. All right. So again, what would be your combination, your optimal combination of beer and pizza? Still 4 beers and 6 pizzas. Keep going. We're not done yet, right? So if there's only 6 available, then that's what we do. All right. So life doesn't really work this way, right?
No.
You need to pull out your wallet. So the budget constraint is also called the income constraint. The income constraint, more generally known as your budget constraint, is that your income, we're going to put our equation goggles on real quick there, you can't spend more than your income. So the price of beer times the quantity of beer plus the price of pizza times the quantity of pizza, spending on beer, spending on pizza can't be greater than your income, because we're not going to allow borrowing in this model and transfers and other things. So remember, this is an economic model. We're going to kind of simplify reality, hopefully get our arms around it, and you guys learn it well enough to test well on it, and then we're going to start to pick it apart. And we're going to say, hey, the real world works this way, and then see how things change. That's the science of economics, is making some assumptions and then relaxing them to hopefully better reflect reality. But we got to start with baby steps. Is everybody okay on this budget constraint? If income equals $10 and the price of beer is $1 and the price of pizza is $2, what is the optimal quantity of pizza and beer for the consumer? That's the consumer's problem with the full budget constraint in there. So let's kind of work this one together. What's going through your minds on how to solve this? Somebody talk here. What's going on in your head on how to go about solving this problem? Okay, calculate what comes out to equal 10. So we got $10 to spend, so we have to be cautious on our spending. What else could we do? What else is going through your mind? Do the ones with the most marginal benefit. Okay, good. So we can start picking them off as we spend. That's a great technique that I'll come back to. Another possibility, if you had an Excel spreadsheet or something, couldn't you just pick, well, here's 40 plus 20 is 60. So 1 and 1 gives me 60 units of happiness. Another possibility is 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, right? And I could create this whole Excel spreadsheet and then just pick the highest one. Might be another way to go about it. All right, so coming back to Jake's suggestion here. If I'm going to spend the first dollar, where do I spend my money first? Do I buy some beer or I buy some pizza? Beer. Why? 40 versus 20. So I pick up my first beer. Do I next want my second beer or my first pizza? Doesn't matter. 20 versus 20. The economist's rule with that is always stick to the beer. So we go with their second beer. Sorry, that's somewhere in the economic journal somewhere. All right. So do I want my third beer or my first pizza? Now we switch over to pizza, right? Now, how much money have we spent already? $2. And now we're going to spend $4. I'm going to jump into my first pizza purchase. Do I want my third beer or my second pizza? Second pizza. 14 is greater than 10. So I'm getting more satisfaction from the second. Do I want to go with the third beer or the third pizza? Now you guys are learning, right? We got 10 versus 10. So back to the economist playbook, stick with the beer. All right, now let me go with the question first.
When you bought the second pizza, wouldn't it have been smarter to have the third beer because you're paying $2 for one pizza, which makes the marginal utility 7 compared to 10?
Ooh, I think Dirk gets an extra credit point for that. So that is our other little caveat here. So Dirk was looking at this problem and said, wait a second, Professor. This one cost me $2 to get 14 units of satisfaction. This one cost me $1 to get 10 units of satisfaction. My bang for my buck is actually here, not here, because on average per dollar, I'm getting 7 units of happiness per dollar. because I'm spending $2 on the pizza. Is that right, Dirk? Is that a fair
Yeah.
characterization of what you just said? Right? So I'm going to come back to that in a little bit here. Maybe I won't come back. Let's do it right now. Since you brought it up, we will bring it right into that. So we're going to create 2 more columns. And frankly, this is the appropriate way to look at these numbers, is the marginal utility per dollar. Now, to get that for beer, we take the marginal utility for beer and divide it by the price of beer. And then we're going to do the same thing for pizza. The marginal utility of pizza divided by the price of pizza is effectively what we did with your $2 business that we just did. Now, the marginal utility of beer divided by the price of beer for the first beer is 40, because it turns out to be 40 divided by 1, because it happens to be priced at $1. It's already done for us in a sense. So all of these numbers are going to look the same, right? So 40, 20, you can just replicate them now. 40, 20, 10, 5, -2, -10. The pizza category is where it gets interesting, where we start to pick up on that. The very first pizza was actually 20 divided by the price of pizza of 2, gave me 10 units of satisfaction per dollar on average. The second pizza is where Dirk picked up on this. Maybe you picked up on it earlier, but this is when you verbalized it. The second pizza gives us 14 units of satisfaction, but it costs us $2, giving us 7 units on average per dollar. And then we just go down the list here, dividing them by 2, 5 units per dollar, 2.5 units of happiness per dollar, -1 per dollar, -5. We're just dividing all of those by 2, all the way down. Did I divide something wrong? Oh, I did. I was picking off this number. Sorry. Yeah. You guys are not crazy. Let's see. I was picking off, so I got to start here. 6 divided by 2 is 3, 2, and 1.5. All right, so this just kind of refined our thinking. We can continue on then. Let's see. So let's just continue on with where we're at, but let's be thinking about these numbers now. Do I want my 4th beer or my 3rd pizza? Good. Doesn't matter, which means we go with beer, right? But truly, we're indifferent is the word that we used here. So we are, as a consumer, this is the language that you'll see in the chapter, the consumer is indifferent between the 4th beer and the 3rd pizza. And so it is a coin flip, right? It really doesn't matter. We found that point where, I don't care. I could go either way, right? You guys have been in that situation in your life. You go, give me either one. You tell me. Flip a coin. So, but sticking with our off-the-record rule, we go with the 4th beer. Do we want the 5th beer or the 3rd pizza? 3rd pizza, because 5 is now definitely greater than -2. Now, who's been keeping track of our budget so far? We just maxed out, right? So even though we would get some satisfaction from additional pizza, we're done. We're out of money. The wallet's empty. We've spent all of our money. And so now what we've done by doing this analysis at the margin is we've assured ourselves that we have maximized total utility, which in this case would be 75 from beer plus 44 from pizza. And you can check this on your own. There is no other combination, given the fact that we have $10. There's no other combination, like we could have 6 pizzas and less beer, right? Or if we go to 4, then I've got $2 freed up, right? If I go here, I have to back off 2 beers. If you look at that combination, it's less. So we've maximized total utility given our budget. All right, what we did, yes? Yes, you could get into doing areas like that. Yep, that would work too, because you're essentially doing the same thing we're doing here with these numbers. All right, so the utility maximizing condition. So at the optimal combo of beer and pizza, or whatever goods we're looking at, this is what must hold. The marginal utility of beer divided by the price of beer is equal to the marginal utility of pizza divided by the price of pizza. That's essentially what we were doing as we teeter-tottered through. Should I take the second beer, the first beer? We were always keeping this equation equal. This is the utility per dollar. So this is the marginal utility per dollar. That's the thing that Dirk brought up to make these numbers fair, if you will. Things that are more expensive are going to have to be cut down on the actual amount of satisfaction per dollar that they give us. And this is the bang for the buck. That's the way I like to refer to it. The bang for the buck. All right. One last thing we need to hit you with, and that is the budget line. The budget line. The budget line is going to put us into the space of quantity of beer and quantity of pizza. This looks dangerously similar to the production possibilities frontier, but now what's constraining us is our $10 worth of income. If I spent all of my money on beer, what's the most beer I could have given the circumstances? 10, right? 10 bucks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All of my money on beer gives me 10 beers. All of my money on pizza gives me 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The combination that maximized utility spent all the $10 was 4 beers and 3 pizzas. 3 pizzas, 1, 2, 3, 4 beers. If you draw this real carefully, what should be true about that combination? It is an equilibrium, but it's on a line, and that's why we call this the budget line. The budget line represents all affordable bundles of beer and pizza. So the budget line shows all affordable bundles of beer and pizza in this example. What's the slope of this line? 2, -2, thank you, down 10. over 5, if we do a little rise over run, we get down 10 over 5, negative 2. That turns out to have a connection to the prices of the goods. The price of pizza over the price of beer is 2 over 1, right? This is called the relative price, which we got introduced to back in chapter 3. The relative price, the price of pizza over the price of beer, is $2 over 1. And this is called the relative price of beer. Now I'm going to do one little funky notation thing for you. This is $2 for every quantity of pizza over $1 per quantity of beer. If I flip this over, I'm saying that 2 beers can be traded for 1 pizza, which is what the market prices are telling me I can do. You want a pizza? Give me a couple beers. It shows the real trade-offs that the market is giving you. I had to do this last night at the soccer concession stand. They were doing half-price burgers at the concession stand because it got rained out last night. My son plays soccer at the high school. So they said half price. I went up there and she said, that'll be $3.50. I pulled out a $5 bill. I had to help her with the math on the change. That was $1.50. She had a platter of hot dogs and hamburgers. And I said, oh, that'll be $1.50 change. She said, I don't have any change. I said, I'll take my change in hot dogs. So hot dogs were 75 cents a piece. I grabbed 2 hot dogs, and now I had 3 hamburgers and 2 hot dogs, and that's what the market does for us, right? It kind of converts the trade-off of hamburgers and hot dogs or pizza and beer. All right, people, we'll see you on Monday. We got chapter 6 and 8. Davis, I'll be with you in just a sec. Yeah, sure.
There was something.
Go ahead. You gotta use this keyboard. Okay, so Davis, we hadn't hit all the ground rules, so I'll cut you some slack today, but when you come in on Zoom, you're expected to have the video on the whole time.
Okay. Yeah.
Because part of it is me seeing your little face there and being able to, you know, possibly interject with you or whatever. So.
Okay.
Now, if there comes a time where you're deathly sick and you're going to be puking, well, just leave the video rather than video mute and just go to the bathroom and come back, just like as if you were in class. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
I was actually going to talk about something for some funding.
Oh, okay.
Because I got you. And
Let me stop this for a second.